let me introduce Jonathan. Rabbi Jonathan Keren Black is the rabbi at the Leo Baeck Center in East Kew, a position he's held since 2003. 30 years ago, Jonathan was considered a maverick when giving sermons about climate change. In 2016, Jonathan received a diploma in social change and sustainability. He feels it is important to put prayer into practice and is strongly committed to environmental and interfaith action. He co-founded the Jewish Ecological Coalition, JECO, was a board member of the Australian Religious Response to Climate Change, and has been very involved in the Stop Adani and other associated coal mines in the Galilee Basin. In conjunction with the ARCC, he has now launched the Adani Stop Coal Start Solar campaign to encourage Adani to bring their extensive solar manufacturing and operating experience to Australia. Several years ago, Jonathan was part of an hourly funeral for coal ceremony outside Josh Frydenberg's office, leading to a meeting with the minister, along with other faith leaders, but is disappointed in the completely inadequate response from government. Jonathan believes we have an obligation to look after the planet for the sake of the future, and has undertaken some non-violent direct action training and is willing to participate in NVDA if necessary to try to bring about the change that is so urgently required. He's lived this most of his adult life. He built an earth sheltered, which is an underground house in London, which was cool in summer, warm in winter, light and bright, quiet and secure. He trialed and compressed natural gas-powered car, which never worked properly. In Melbourne, he built a 7-star energy show house and ran regular tours. Since 2003, he has driven hybrid cars, but now has a plug-in hybrid, which he explains is a fully electric car for the first 30 kilometers a day with 0 emissions, and then an efficient hybrid and the best car he's ever had. Jonathan is currently building his 3rd eco house, a modular or factory-built one, having concluded that this is the most efficient, cleanest and quickest way to construct eco homes. So we're dealing with someone who's been living this for a long time and can talk from the heart about both faith and his belief in action. So I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan, who, as again, we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that drive him, and then hopefully we'll have a discussion between our 2 panelists and with the rest of the audience. So Jonathan.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, everybody. I am actually going to turn back to my friend and colleague, the other Alex, because I didn't put my hand up that I've been arrested, and I want to show you a 2-minute film of her and our colleagues up in Queensland, if I might.
Hi, my name's Mark. I'm here this chilly morning in front of the Adani workers camp because I reckon we've got a responsibility for those people who are struggling in life. And climate change is really going to affect the people on the margins, the poor, the suffering, the marginalised, much more than the rich.
Is stolen land. It has never been ceded. We have no treaty with the people of this place.
My name is Tejo Pala Rawls. I'm a member of the Triratna Buddhist order, and I'm here because I believe that protecting all forms of life is just basic to being a Buddhist. It's basic to being a human being, just having compassion for life. And I'm also really proud to be standing with people of other faiths here today with whom I have an awful lot in common. So that's why we're here. We're also here to stand up for the rights of the Wangan and Jangalingu people. It's extraordinary that people can talk in terms of religious freedom in this country, except, hey, when it's indigenous, well, if we want to, we can just take their land away and take away all their ancestral and spiritual connection, because what, we're going to build a coal mine to destroy our planet.
I'm here today because I'm tired of praying for rain. I've prayed for rain for too long.
We stand in solidarity.
And now I'm taking action to protect our water. Because giving Adani unlimited water access
This is their land, their story.
in a place where farmers have been dealing with drought for a long time
And we will
isn't
join
right.
with them in protecting and honouring all that is present in this land.
So I hope everybody could hear that clearly, and see how important it is to actually be there on the spot to try and stop these terrible destructive things happening. Now, I want to start myself by acknowledging the indigenous owners, the indigenous custodians of the land, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation in this area where I live and work, who kept it and managed it sustainably for probably 60,000 years. I believe that religion is about making the world a better place for all its inhabitants, flora and fauna, and everything that makes up the earth as we know it. And in Judaism, we call this tikkun olam, healing or perfecting the world. We also have an important principle of shutafut, which you might not hear about as much as tikkun olam. Shutafut means partnership. It means working in partnership with the Creator to achieve that end, to use our expertise, ingenuity, and skills to build earthquake-proof buildings in earthquake zones, clean water supplies where there are none, education provisions for all to benefit from, health care for all, a safe and clean environment so that we pass on God's world in good condition to those who come after us, our children and grandchildren, and those we will never know, to use the biblical phrase, to the 100th generation. I believe that the prayer book should be a mirror. When we say the words, we must ask, what have we done and what are we doing to bring about these goals? Otherwise, whether in English or Hebrew or Latin or Arabic or Urdu, they are just empty words. I believe in putting prayers into practice. This applies to a range of things, not just accessible water, food, shelter, health care, and education. We need to be welcoming, supporting, and providing for refugees and those seeking asylum. And the UNHCR says that there are currently more than 70 million of these today in our world. And this number is only going to increase as climate change accelerates. We need to address warfare and oppression and ethnic cleansing and genocide. And we have not got a good record on these so far. It all seems so complicated, usually because it is. We have to address extremes of inequality. And almost by definition, by being in Australia, we are all in the top part of this particular continuum. Though we should also acknowledge the gross injustice that's been done to the original custodians of this land and the huge inequalities that continue even here in Australia. But in 2018, The Guardian reported on a study that showed that the world's 7.6 billion people represent just 0.01%, or 1 in 10,000 of all living things on this planet. And yet, since the dawn of civilization, humanity has caused the loss so far of 83% of all wild mammals and half of all plants. One particular area I've turned my attention to, therefore, is climate change, and in particular, the human actions that are quite evidently causing and driving it. So I want to share with you a little PowerPoint now. So again, I want to acknowledge the indigenous wisdom which we are able to share. And it says that we don't own the land owns us. Some 60,000 years worth of indigenous care for this land. But it's worth pointing out that the Jewish tradition or the biblical tradition is the same, that God owns the land, and we do not own land. We are simply here to look after it and care for it. I want to go back to 1987, when there was a terrible hurricane, and it was called the Great Storm in Britain, where I was living at the time. And millions of trees were uprooted and destroyed. And I literally mean millions. It was such a great destruction that one of the tabloids had this title, Holocaust of the Trees. So ever since then, I've realized that the term Holocaust is being misused, and that's why we try to use the word Shoah for the Nazi Holocaust, but it certainly shows the extent of the damage and the way that they wanted to express it. So we have only one Earth, and it's up to us to take care of it together, according to our tradition. And Hillel said some almost 2,000 years ago, Im lo achshav ematai. If not now, when? And the truth is that I think Alex and I have both come to the conclusion that we have to act now. We have to do all in our power to act now, because we have no more time left. It's up to us to take care of it together. Oh, I've got all those again. How nice. Go away. Right. It's a lovely story from a midrash some 1400 years ago. It gives me shivers to read this. When God created humanity, God told us, everything has been created for your sake. Do not corrupt the world, for if you do, there will be no one to set it right after you. So practically speaking, I'm talking about non-violent direct action, and I'm started by saying I haven't been arrested. I've done some non-violent direct action training, some of it at Alex's church, but I haven't actually been arrested yet. So perhaps I shouldn't be speaking to you today. But then I thought that there's all sorts of non-violent direct action that I have been involved with, and which we can all do. And one of them, so some of them are very minor. I should say that what I'm going to show you are some fairly substantial things like building houses. But some of the smaller things we can do, actually, I'll just give you one very, very tiny example. I only shave every 2 days just to save the electricity. And it saves some time as well. My wife and I have electric toothbrushes, but we don't have each of them plugged into chargers. We actually only have one charger running, and we have one of us charging through the day and one of us charging through the night. So these are very, very tiny things that are obviously going to make almost no difference, like the butterfly flapping its wings, but these are the bigger things. In 1997, you can see me at the bottom of the picture there, where I still had some color in my hair, and I had a 3-year-old daughter who's now coming up to 25. We built an earth-sheltered home in London. And that means underground. We dug a hole in the ground. We built the house. We put the roof on. Very light and airy, but most importantly, very warm in the winter and very cool in the summer, and a lovely, quiet environment to live in. It would have another advantage here as well. It's bushfire proof. When we came to Australia, I helped to set up the Jewish Ecological Coalition. I think that was already mentioned. And one of the things we did was build this Jekko show house, which was our home. We lived in Camberwell, very environmentally friendly. And it used only a quarter of the energy of the other 11 houses that were the same size and built at the same time. 1/4 of the energy, just by careful design. And at the time, there was a severe water shortage and drought. It only used 1/10 of the mains water. We collected all of the rainwater that fell in the house, and we used it very efficiently across all of the house, except the cold water in the kitchen sink. And we used only 1/10 the mains water. This can be done easily if we put our minds to saving our world. Then Reverend Alex and me with others outside Josh Frydenberg's office when he was the Minister of the Environment, holding the funeral for coal. That slogan on the right-hand side, clean coal is a dirty lie, is just as true today. And I heard yesterday that the government is running around looking for projects to put money into to employ people. And one of the ones that was mentioned again was clean coal. Clean coal is a furphy. There is no such thing as clean coal. We can slightly clean up coal, but nothing like enough. There is also, by the way, no such thing as clean gas. We've got to get off the fossil fuels. Participate in climate action marches. It's easy. You'll see our banner back there is the Sacred Earth one with the different faith symbols. we have to emphasize the moral obligation to look after our planet. Change your superannuation fund or your pension investments. I have some of my funds in the Australian Ethical Company, a very robust and thorough ethical investment to all of the ethical investigations to all their investments, and also very well performing. Change your bank as well, by the way. We've got to get out the big four banks because they will not commit to stopping investment in coal. Bank Australia, Bank First, you have various alternatives which are very capable and government underwritten banks who do not invest in fossil fuels. We ran a program with the Australian Religious Response to Climate Change, which is called Living the Change, and it talks about what you can do practically, things like changing your bank and your super investment, but also things like reducing flying. Flying is the worst thing. I know you're all doing a fantastic job of it at the moment, and I heartily congratulate everybody on reducing their flying very dramatically. But really, flying is one of the worst things that we do. It turns out that injecting the emissions from airplanes straight into the upper atmosphere is 5 times worse even than emissions at ground level. And it's really something that we can all reduce. Another thing we can do easily, unless we're already vegetarian or vegan, is to cut down on our meat consumption, which produces huge amounts of emissions. So this is an article that was in the Jewish News last year about our 2019 Living the Change program. And then we had a demonstration outside Siemens. We are really engaged with trying to stop the Adani coal mine. And the Adani coal mine in the Galilee Basin and the other coal mines which will come on after, like Domino's, once they've got their rail line in to ship the coal out. We've been working very, very hard, many people, to try and stop this mine from going ahead. And we know that every day that passes, the mine becomes less economically viable because our advances in solar and in wind and in other renewable energies is moving so rapidly, but it's already not cost effective to build a new coal mine and to build new coal power stations. We really wonder why they are still doing it. Part of the answer is their huge investment in the Abbott Point container shipping depot. And if they use Abbott Point, of course, as well as the emissions, the damage that's going to be done to the barrier reef is huge, enormous. So we had a demonstration outside Siemens, and that was because they can't build a coal mine without signaling. And Siemens is still negotiating to put in the signaling for their rail line, whilst other signaling contractors have all pulled out. And I want to read to you what I said to Siemens, to the demonstration. The Wangan Jagalingou Family Council has called on Siemens to suspend its railway signaling contract with Adani. Their elder, Marawa Johnson, is in Munich at the time we held this when they were having their AGM. He is in Munich right now seeking a meeting with Siemens CEO Joe Kaeser, and will try to address Siemens shareholders at the annual meeting on that day. In a previous statement, Siemens CEO had claimed the Wangan Jagalingou had approved the Adani mine, when in fact they have never given their free, prior and informed consent. Meanwhile, Siemens has made a commitment to be carbon neutral by 2030. That's less than 10 years away, and certainly less than the lifespan planned for the Carmichael mines. It would seem that Siemens cares more about profit than their commitment to the planet. Read their balance sheets and their profit projections rather than their words. I recently wrote to Joe Kaeser, a Siemens CEO, a letter, and this is part of what I said to him. I haven't yet had a response. Siemens, a responsible major world engineering company for 75 years, have reportedly and inconceivably agreed to provide signaling for the Adani rail line. But of course, Siemens has a longer history than 3/4 of a century. It's just that it was not so responsible back then, and it has spent 75 years trying to repair the damage to its reputation. Because of the irresponsible decisions now being made, I feel you should be told or reminded of Siemens' darker past. Siemens was a leading corporate participant in Hitler's Death Through Work program, taking Jewish and other slave laborers during the Holocaust and using them to construct the gas chambers that would subsequently kill them and their families. Siemens, already a major European enterprise by then, also ran slave labor factories at Auschwitz, Buchenwald, Flossenburg, Grossrosen, Mauthausen, Neuengamme, Ravensbrück, and Sachsenhausen death camps. In late 1944, at the height of World War II, Siemens' total workforce included 50,000 slave laborers. Siemens Electric Company was the major private firm that used slave labor at Ravensbrück concentration camp. Today, this is the second largest electric company in the world. In a separate camp adjoining the main one, Siemens used the women to make electrical components for V1 and V2 rockets that devastated parts of Britain. This is the history that Siemens has been trying to expunge for 75 years. Actually, Siemens suffered a major slip back into these dark years less than 20 years ago, surely the single biggest post-Holocaust moment of insensitivity of any major company. In 2001, they tried to trademark the word Zyklon for a new range of products, including a line of gas ovens. Zyklon B, of course, was the name of the poison gas used in the gas chambers during the Holocaust. I asked the CEO, do we need to publicize these huge mistakes by previous managements to highlight what Siemens will do for a profit? I urge you to rapidly change your decision and walk away from Adani's coal mine. In the Holocaust, Siemens undoubtedly participated in major crimes against humanity. And by helping to develop major new fossil fuel mines, they will be again doing just that. Crimes against humanity for more shareholder profit, never mind the cost. So that was fairly strong words. As I say, I haven't had a response yet, and consequently, I am happy or prepared to repeat these words to show how strongly we feel about this and the sort of actions that we are taking. So I'm just going to conclude my presentation, moving on to something else that we can be doing as direct action, which is that I've been speaking at company AGMs on behalf of concerned shareholders through a wonderful organization called Market Forces. And so we've often gone along to shareholder meetings very well briefed on their decisions and their actions and their corporate responsibility, and raised questions which have changed decisions of their board over the coming years, and significant achievements being made through that project. You can also sound the alarm for the environment, as I've been doing. I've been going around blowing the shofar, and I spoke at the recent student climate strike and blew the shofar so that, you know, the shofar is the old alarm call, and it's time to sound the alarm for the climate. And finally, just to go back to the Stop Adani, you all will have heard of the Stop Adani program, but I feel that it's always better to have a more positive message if we can. So you might have seen behind me, and now you can see here in front of me, the Stop Adani Coal, Start Adani Solar message, the red stop and the green go button. And the reason for this is that Adani turns out to be the biggest solar operator in India, and it also produces solar panels in India, and they're the most efficient solar panels that are produced in India. So it has a huge expertise already. And if it were to bring that to Queensland and the Northern Territories and use as much energy in establishing its solar credentials and its solar expertise here in Australia, as it is trying to start coal, we'd be very much better off. If you want to participate in this campaign with this positive switch, we've got t-shirts that say "Stop Adani Coal, Start Adani Solar," and we've got a mug and even a coaster to put the mug on. So basically, a very important positive message to try and move forward. Thank you very much for giving me the time to speak today, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Jonathan.